Good morning, student. And today our topic is execution under .NET framework. Before execution under .NET framework, first of all I will tell you a little bit about the .NET framework. Why we are prefer to execute our programming in the .NET framework. Interoperability, because the computer system commonly require the interaction between newer and older application. .NET framework provides the mean to assess the functionality implemented in newer and older programs that execute outside the .NET framework environment. Access to component is provided in the system runtime, interloop services and system enterprises services namespace of the framework assess other functionality achieved using the PInvoke feature. The common language runtime engine. The common language runtime services as execution engine of the .NET framework. All the .NET program execute under the supervision of CLR, means common language runtime. The guarantee of certain properties and behavior in the area of memory management, security and exception handling. The language independent. The .NET framework introduce common type of system. The CTS specification define all possible data types, programming constructs support by CLR, how they may or may not interact with each other, confirmation to the common language infrastructure. The CLI specification, because of this feature of the .NET framework, support exchange type and object instance between libraries and application written using the conforming .NET language. So, these are the main features which are .NET framework. We are base classes library, simplified deployment, portability, security. So, whenever you are typing, whenever you are executing any program, you have to be require the security of that of the program or your project. The design and address some of the vulnerability such as the buffer overflow which have been exploited by malicious software. Additionally, .NET provides a common security model for all the applications. The newest technology from the Microsoft for application development support fully managed but also hybrid mix, the managed native through PInvoke and managed and unmanaged C++, which means the easier to write the code, does not have a lot of memory leaks. Whenever you write the code in the C++ or in C#, so it is very difficult to handle the things. The support fully managed but also hybrid mix managed and native through PInvoke, managed and unmanaged C++, which means that it is easier to write the code that does not have lot of the memory leakage. The WEF and BCF, the areas new way building UI communicate between processor and the process of the system. The .NET framework is fully integrated IDE available. The Linux and Mac support through the third party of Mono. Many languages available both dynamic or static. Dynamic means Iron, Python and Iron Ruby. The static is C# or Visual .NET or C#, both object oriented C#, Visual Basic .NET and C++ and the functional. So, now we start on the lecture. What is MSIL Intermediate Language or JIT compilation? In the today lecture we have discussed these things. What is the MSIL Intermediate Language or JIT compilation? First of all, I start from the MSIL. What is the meaning of MSIL? In ASP.NET you can write the code in many different languages such as Visual Basic, C#, J# and other. When code is compiled using its associated compiler, it translates into a language independent, CPU independent representation called a Microsoft Intermediate Language. So, from the name of intermediate language, whenever write any code in C, C# or Visual Basic or other any programming language, but whenever you write in the code in .NET framework, so it is independently works. At runtime, MSIL run the context of .NET framework, which translate MSIL into CPU specification instruction for the processor on the computer running that application, compiling the code, improve the performance, security, stability and interoperability. So, any programming language, either C, C sharp, Visual Basic or whatever the programming language, but you have to be execution of the program in the .NET framework is the very fast, and security is main our agenda to implementation our programs. The MSIL, the Microsoft Intermediate Language or Intermediate Language, is a machine independent code generated by .NET framework. After the compilation of program written in any language by you, whatever you have language using, but you compiling in you will use the compiler of .NET framework. The MSIL or known as a CIL, Common Intermediate Language. So, whenever you use .NET framework, it is the Common Intermediate Language. Let us see some other definition. MSIL is the CPU independent instruction set into which the .NET framework programs are compiled. It contains instructions for loading, storing, initializing and calling methods on the object. Once again I repeat, MSIL is the CPU independent instruction set into which .NET framework. So, CPU to totally independent हो गया. So, we have to be executed. Program are compiled. It contain instructions for loading, storing, initializing and calling method on the object. Combined with the metadata and common type of system, MSIL allow for true cross language intergenation. Prior to execution, MSIL is converted into machine code. It is not interpreted source. So, whenever you have to be write the program into .NET framework, MSIL is converted into the machine code. It is not interpreted. When compiling to managed code, the compiler translate your source code into Microsoft Intermediate Language (MSIL), which is a CPU independent set of instruction that can be efficiently converted into the native code. So, it is which is CPU independent set of instruction that can be efficiently converted into native code. So, Common Intermediate Language or CIL pronounce either CIL or CIL. So, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ Common Intermediate Language ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ CIL ਔਰ CIL ਦੀ ਗੱਲ CIL ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਬੋਲਾਂਗੇ. ਸੋ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਾਊਂਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ. Formally is called a Microsoft Intermediate Language or MSIL is the lowest level of human readable programming language in the common language infrastructure and in the .NET framework. So, एक गल बड़ी इस गल ते सोचना चाहिए कि ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ common intermediate language or it is called a CIL or CIL. So, it is a intermediate language whenever any programming should be executed on the .NET framework. It is also a lowest level of human readable programming language. So, language which target the .NET framework compiled to CIL, Common Intermediate Language, which is assembled into bytecode. CIL is an object oriented assembly language and entirely stack based. It is executed by the virtual machine. So, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ intermediate language ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਏਗੀ ਤਾਂ CIL, Common Intermediate Language, is an object oriented assembly language and entirely stack based. It executed by the virtual machine. So, Common Intermediate Language. The Common Intermediate Language CIL pronounced either CIL or KIL, formerly is called a Microsoft Intermediate Language, is the lowest level human readable programming language defined by the Common Language Infrastructure CLI specification and is used by .NET framework and Mono. The language which target a CLI compatible runtime environment compiled to CIL in which assembled into an object code and that has a bytecode style format. So, एक गल बड़े ध्यान नाल जी ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ assembled ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜਦੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ .NET ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ, ਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੋਡ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਹੋਏਗਾ we can say it is a bytecode. So, bytecode is very important to understand the things. When in the .NET framework and write any program or any project, any design of any project, you can be easily generated the bytecode. The CIL is a object coded assembly language and is a entirely stack based. It is bytecode translate into native code or executed by virtual machine. It is bytecode translated into native code or executed. So, native code is nothing but native code is a execute code. ਜਦੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਿਖਤਾ, ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਰਨ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਜੋ ਕੋਡ ਆਏਗਾ that is a native code. So, CIL was originally known as a Microsoft Intermediate Language. ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ Intermediate Language ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ. Any code of any of the programming language. So, you have to using in the native code or stack based. So, that is a that way it is called a intermediate language. So, during the beta release of the .NET language due to standardization of C# and other common infrastructure language, the bytecode is officially known as a CIL. So, it is very clear ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ bytecode ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, bytecode is known as a common intermediate language. So, ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ language either C ਹੈ, C# ਆ ਜਾਂ Visual Basic ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਹੋਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਿੰਗ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ .NET ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਲਈ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟ ਕਰਨ ਵੇਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ CIL ਹੀ ਬੋਲਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਉਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੈਟਿਵ ਕੋਡ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ. ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਾਈਟ ਕੋਡ ਆ, ਸੋ ਇਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜਨਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੇਲੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਹੀ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਫਾਸਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗੀ, ਤਾਂ ਈਜ਼ੀਲੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ. ਇਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ CIL ਹੈ, ਇਟ ਇਜ਼ ਏ ਆਲ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਿੰਗ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਆਈਦਰ C# ਹੈ ਜਾਂ C ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਵਿਜ਼ੂਅਲ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਪਾਈਲਰ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ .NET ਵਿੱਚ ਰਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. ਸੋ ਜਨਰਲ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ, more general information regarding this one, that during compilation of CIL programming language, the source code is translated into CIL code rather than the platform or processor specific object code. So, ਹੁਣ ਅਦਰਵਾਈਜ਼ ਬਾਕੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਿੰਗ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਆਬਜੈਕਟ ਕੋਡ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਬਟ ਇਨ ਦਾ CIL programming language we have to source code is translated into the intermediate language code. So, CIL is a CPU and platform independent instruction set, then can be executed in any environment of supporting common language infrastructure. So, ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ common intermediate language ਬੋਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ. So, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ environment ਨੂੰ support ਕਰਨ ਲਈ common language infrastructure such as the .NET runtime on window or the cross platform mono runtime. In the theory of this eliminates the need of distributed CIL is then assembled into form of so called bytecode and CLI assembly is created. So, that is why intermediate generate ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ execution ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ. Upon the execution of CLI assembly, its code passed through runtime is a JIT compiler to generate native code. So, now we have to more concentrate on JIT. So, compiler generate Native code ahead of time compilation may also be used, which eliminates this step, but the cost of execution file portability. So, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework 'ਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਿੰਗ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਵਾਈ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ .NET 'ਚ ਕਰੀਏ। ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਈਨ ਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦਾ ਜਾਂ design of your project, that is very effective. You can be apply so many effects on that design of the your project. So, but its a cost is executable file portability. Naturally ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਵੀ cost ਥੋੜੀ increase ਹੋਏਗੀ, but the security of in the .NET form is very applicable. ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ security ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗੀ, ਜਿਸ ਕਰਕੇ nobody can be open your programs or your projects. The native code is executed by the compiler processor, different executable file for different platform and the CPU types. The CIL code is verified for safety during the runtime, provide better security and reliability than the native compiled executable file. So, ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਦੀ ਰਿਲਾਇਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਇਜ਼ ਨੈਟਿਵ ਕੋਡ ਕੰਪਾਈਲਡ ਫਾਰ ਦਾ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਦਾ ਫਾਈਲ। ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਉਹ ਬੜਾ ਹੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖੇਗਾ, ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਉਹਦੀ reliability of that particular code. The execution process look like this. The source code is converted to a common intermediate language, which is CLI's equivalent to assembly language for the CPU. ਸੋ CPU ਲਈ ਜੋ ਵੀ CIL ਕੋਡ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET frameworks ਕੰਮ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੀ ਕੋਡ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਹੋਏਗਾ that is equivalent of the assembly language for the CPU. CPU ਲਈ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ assembly language ਦੀ ਜਿਵੇਂ assembly language ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਸੋ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ CPU ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੇਗਾ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਨੈਟਿਵ ਕੋਡ ਹੈ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਬਾਈਟ ਕੋਡ ਹੈ। ਸੋ CIL Common Intermediate Language bytecode has instruction for the following group of tasks. So, ਜਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੰਬਰ ਆਫ ਇੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਹੋਣਗੇ, ਨੰਬਰ ਆਫ ਟਾਸਕਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਫਾਰ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਲੋਡ ਐਂਡ ਸਟੋਰ ਆਲ ਦਾ ਅਰਥਮੈਟਿਕ ਆਪਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ, ਪਲੱਸ ਕਰਨਾ, ਕੋਈ ਮਾਈਨਸ ਕਰਨਾ, ਐਡੀਸ਼ਨ, ਸਬਟ੍ਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ, डिवीजन, so all the arithmetic function, type conversion, object creation and manipulation, operand, stack management, push pop, control, transfer or branching, method of invocation and return through the exception monitoring based concurrency. So, these are the main tasks which are in the CIL bytecode is CIL bytecode instruction. So, these instruction ਭਾਵੇਂ ਅਸੀਂ C ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ CPU ਡਿਪੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਤਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਇੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਲਿਖਣੀ ਆ ਫਸਟ ਆਫ ਆਲ ਲੋਡ ਐਂਡ ਸਟੋਰ, ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਆਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕੁਛ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਫਸਟ ਆਫ ਆਲ ਲੋਡ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਦੈਨ ਇਟ ਸਟੋਰ ਆਲ ਅਰਥਮੈਟਿਕ ਆਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ। I will repeat these things are because these are very important. Load and store all the arithmetic operation, multiplication, division, all the type conversions, object creation and manipulations, operand, stack management, push pop, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ stack use ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ we are using the push or pop, control transferring, any branch, loop, ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੂਪਿੰਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, while loop, for loop, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਨੋ ਆ C ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਾਂ C# 'ਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੂਪਿੰਗ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। we have transferring in the .NET framework, it is called a control transfer. Method of invocation and returns, so through the exceptions and the monitoring based concurrency. So, and in today's the last topic is that is a just in time compilation. Just in time compilation, in the bytecode compiled system, the source code is a translated into the intermediate representation known as a bytecode. So, once again the bytecode compiled system, the source code is translated into the intermediate representation known as a bytecode. So, ਜੋ intermediate code generate ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ intermediate code generate ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, bytecode. So, bytecode is not the machine code. So, ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਬੜੀ ਕਲੀਅਰ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜੋ bytecode ਆ ਉਹ machine code ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, that is for the .NET framework, that is for the .NET framework. Bytecode is not a machine code. for any particular computer, and many of the portable among the computer architecture. The bytecode may then be interpreted by or run on the virtual machine. The JIT compiler read the bytecode in many sections or in a fully rarely and compile them dynamically into the machine language, so the program can run faster. So bytecode generate ਹੋਣ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ .NET framework ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਪਾਈਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਾਸਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰ ਇਨਟੂ ਦਾ .NET framework। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਵਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਦੀ ਫਾਈਲ ਨੂੰ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਸਲੇਟ ਕਰੇਗਾ, then it will be execute, but in the .NET framework it compiled so fast, that's ਕਾਰਨ JIT just in time। Java perform the runtime check on the various section the code, and this is reason the entire code is not compiled at once. This can be done per file. Once again, Java perform the runtime check for the various section for the code, and this reason the entire code is not compiled at once। So ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ Java ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਿਆ suppose ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੋਡ ਕੰਪਾਈਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰੇਗਾ। This can be done per file, per function, even or any arbitrary code fragments। So the code can be compiled when it's about to be executed, hence the name is a just in time, and then cached and reused later without needing to compile। So ਇਹੀ ਵੱਡਾ ਐਡਵਾਂਟੇਜ ਹੈ .NET framework ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਕੰਪਾਈਲਰ ਨੂੰ, ਇਟ ਵਿਲ ਬੀ ਟੇਕ ਪਰ ਫਾਈਲ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਫੰਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਆਰਬਿਟਰੀ ਕੋਡ ਹੈ, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਜਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਜਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਤਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਕੈਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਰੀਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਵਿਦਾਊਟ ਐਨੀ time delay। So that's why it's called a just in time। So common goal of using JIT technique is to reach the surpass the performance of static compilation while the maintaining the advantage of bytecode interpretation, much of the heavy lifting, the parsing of the original source code and performance of basic optimization is often handled at the compile time prior to development। So compilation from bytecode is a machine code is much faster than compilation from source code. Deployed bytecode is portable unlike native code, since the runtime has control over the compilation like interpreted bytecode. It can run secure sandbox compiler from bytecode machine code to machine code are easier to write because the portable bytecode compiler has already done of the work। So once again I will repeat the JIT function, basically because JIT is very need to clarify, because if your JIT is not clear you can not easily write the code, because we can't compare with .NET framework to other programming language। So ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ bytecode ਜਿਹੜਾ compiled system ਹੈ, the source code is translated into a intermediate representation known as the bytecode। So bytecode is not a machine code। So ਇਹ ਗੱਲ clear ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, bytecode is not a machine code for any particular so bytecode may then be interpreted by run on the virtual machine। The JIT compiler read the bytecode in many sections or fully rarely the compiles then dynamically into the machine language, so the program can run faster। So program can run faster। So Java perform runtime check on the various section of the code, and this is the reason of the entire code is not compiled at once. This can be done per file, per function, or even any arbitrary code fragments. The code can be compiled when it is about to be executed, hence the name just in time, and then cached and reused later without ਨੀਡਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਰੀਕੰਪਾਈਲ। ਸੋ ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾਵਾ ਦੀ ਜੇ ਪਰਫੋਰਮੈਂਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਰਨ ਟਾਈਮ 'ਤੇ ਚੈੱਕ ਕਰੂਗਾ, ਹਰੇਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਚੈੱਕ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਥਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਜਾਵਾ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੰਜ਼ਿਊਮਿੰਗ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਸੋ ਬਟ ਇਨ ਦਾ .NET ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਹਰੇਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹਰੇਕ ਟਾਸਕ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ then it is just in time and then cached, all the code is stored in the cached and whenever it required to reused in the compiler. So common goal of using JIT technique is to reach the surpass the performance of static compilation while maintaining the advantage of bytecode interpretation. Much of the heavy lifting of parsing the original source code performance of basic optimization of even handle the compiler time. The priority of deployment, the compilation from bytecode machine code is much the compilation from bytecode to machine code is much faster than compiling from source code deployed bytecode or portable. Unlike native code, since the runtime has control over the compilation like interpreted bytecode, it can run in the secure sandbox compiler from the bytecode to machine code are easier write because the portable bytecode is compiler has already done much work. In the contrast of traditional interpreted virtual machine will simply interpret of the bytecode. ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨਲ ਕੋਈ ਕੰਪਾਈਲਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੇਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਵਰਚੁਅਲ ਮਸ਼ੀਨ ਵਿਲ ਬੀ ਸਿੰਪਲੀ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੇਟਡ ਬਾਈਟਕੋਡ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਿੰਪਲੀ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੇਟ ਕਰੇਗੀ। ਜਨਰਲੀ ਵਿਦ ਲੋਅਰ ਪਰਫੋਰਮੈਂਸ ਸਮ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੇਟਰ even interpret source code without the step of first compiling to the bytecode with the even worse performance. Statically compiled code is native code prior to deployment dynamically compilation environment in one in which the compiler can be used during the execution. For instance, most of common Lisp system have compiler function which can compile new functioning created during the run. So this provide the advantage of JIT, but the programmer rather than the runtime is controlled of what part of the code are compiled. This can also be compiled dynamically generated code which can in many scenarios provide the substantial performance of advantage static compiled code as well over the most JIT system. So ਅਸਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ JIT ਸਿਸਟਮ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ just in time ਉਹਦੇ ਮੇਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫਾਇਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਕੋਡ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਉਸੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੈਸ਼ੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸਟੋਰ ਕਰ ਲਏਗਾ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਉਹ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਐਗਜ਼ੀਕਿਊਟ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੁਛ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ .NET ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਦੇ ਆ, .NET ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਦੇ ਰਿਗਾਰਡਿੰਗ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਹੋਰ ਦੱਸਦਾ। The .NET framework introduced basic the common type of system. There are common type of system the CT specification by all the possible data type programming constructs support by the CLR. How many may not interact with each other, the confirming the common language infrastructure. The specification because of this feature the .NET framework support exchange type and object instance the library application written using the conforming .NET language. So these are the base class library, simplified deployment, portability, security, the design of address some of the vulnerabilities such as buffer overflow which have been exploited by the malicious software. Additionally, .NET provide a common security model for all the applications. So these are technology for actually .NET framework technology for the Microsoft for the application deployment, because support of fully managed but also hybrid mix managed and native through the PInvoke and managed unmanaged C#, which means that it is easier to write the code that does not have a lot of memory leaks. So, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ .NET framework ਦਾ ਕੋਡ ਜੋ ਜਨਰੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਟਰਾਈ ਰਾਈਟ ਕਰੋ, ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਡ ਰਾਈਟ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਈਜ਼ੀਲੀ ਯੂ ਕੈਨ ਬੀ ਹੈਂਡਲ of the memory leakage. BPF and BCF are the new way of the building UI communicating between the process and the